please welcome back Bill Lepp.
Thank you very much. I come from a little tiny town called Half Dollar, West Virginia. We had two streets in Half Dollar. One was called Main Street. The other one was called, nah, that ain't Main Street. And we had, just on one little campus, we had the elementary school, the junior high, and the high school, and then the jail. And a lot of us just went right on through. And then we had a Methodist church, your variety pack of Baptist churches, and our parents told us that there were some Catholics that lived over the hill. But we didn't know if that was true, or if that was just something they told us so we'd go to bed at night. But my buddy Skeeter and I loved the Half Dollar Baptist Church. Now, when I say that we loved the Baptist Church, I mean we loved the building that was the Baptist Church, because we were Methodists. But the reason we loved the building that was the Baptist Church is because the attic was infested with bats. And on a spring evening, a summer evening, a fall evening, you could go and sit behind the church and just watch thousands and thousands of bats flying out of the eaves, flying out of the steeple. It was a beautiful sight to see. So Skeeter and I were very excited when it was announced that because they were doing renovations at the Methodist church, that we would be having a joint vacation Bible school at the Baptist church. And we were excited for several reasons. One, we had lots of Baptist friends, but it was difficult to tell the Baptist children from the Methodist children on the playground because we all knew the same bad words. So we were excited to have the opportunity to see the Baptist children being Baptist in their natural Baptist habitat. On top of that, we understood that inside the Baptist church, we'd never been in there, they had a big baptismal, like a big bathtub where they do their baptisms. Now, when you're a Methodist, when you get baptized, it generally happens as a baby. You don't have anything to do with it, and they just sprinkle a little bit of water on your head. But the Baptists get the full-bore dunking. And when I asked my dad why that was, he said that's because Methodists just have dirty minds. But the Baptists are dirty all over. And then, there's no rebaptism in the Methodist church, but we understood that there were Baptists who got baptized like once a week. So, we were excited at the idea of seeing that happen. So we got to the little church, and the little old ladies who were running the vacation Bible school put the boys on one side of the sanctuary and the girls on the other, and we sang some hymns, and then there was a little devotional, and then it came time to give the offering. But instead of passing the plates in the traditional fashion, what happened was we all got up. The boys lined up against this wall, the girls lined up against this wall, and we progressed forward. And someone had built, in front of the altar, an offering-giving device, the likes of which I had never seen before and have never seen since. It was a 2x4 that stood about 3 feet tall, and bolted loosely perpendicularly across the top of that 2x4 was another 2x4. And hung from this side of the 2x4 by binder's twine was a coffee can painted blue. And hung from this side of the 2x4 by binder's twine was a coffee can painted pink. And the girls put their money in this can, and the boys put their money in this can, and whichever side of the scale went down, that gender won the offering. Yeah, you should feel uncomfortable about that. There's a lot wrong with that. And it's not even all theological. I mean, part of the problem is that the weight of American money has very little to do with the value of American money. A nickel is twice the size of a dime, but it's only worth half as much. 10 pennies weighs more than a $100 bill. Now, what Skeeter and I were most excited about that whole vacation Bible school idea was, to be honest, we wanted to get in the baptismal. And I don't know why, except that we were 7, and it seemed like the right sort of thing to do. So anytime we could sneak out of class, anytime the sanctuary was empty, we would go, and first we would just look. I don't know exactly what I thought we'd see. I guess we thought we'd see Baptist sin. just sort of swimming around. Like evil koi, you know, like, oh, there goes greed, there goes avarice. Now, I don't know why I picked those as Baptist sin, but anyway, we'd stand there and we'd look, and then the Baptist pastor would appear behind us. Now, we didn't go to that church, but it was a small town. We knew everybody, and he was this gruff old guy. I say he was old. Now I realize he was probably 30. But he had this wonderful attitude where he really did not care whether or not you agreed with him, because he knew that he was right, and that you would either one day come to see things his way or you would go to hell. And he was fine with either outcome. And he would walk up behind us and he would say, boys, 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 I know you want to get in there, but that's not a toy. And when a man does things purely for his own enjoyment and not for the benefit of others or the glory of God, he will be tainted and stained that others may know. And we thought, wow. That is good stuff. Now, it didn't make us not want to get in the baptismal, but there was no denying it was good stuff. And that pastor hated the way we were doing the offering. But any pastor worth his or her salt knows that there's only so many battles you can win. And taking on the little old ladies that run the vacation Bible school is not a wise career move. Yeah, there's probably some of you out there tonight. And so he wouldn't tell them to quit, but by Thursday he couldn't stand it anymore. And when it came time for the devotional, he got up to do the devotional, but he didn't read a pithy little poem. No, he got up in the pulpit and he gave a full-bore sermon. He started by telling us the story of where Jesus is in the temple with the disciples, and they're watching people give the offering, and the rich guys are coming up and just putting in tons and tons of cash. And then the little old lady walks up and she puts in her 2 mites, or her 2 pennies. And Jesus turns to the disciples and he says to the disciples, who gave the greater offering? And Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John are looking for their pens, right? They're like, where's my red pen? He's talking. And then, So Jesus says, who gave the greater offering? And then one of the disciples says one of those things that make me think that the reason Jesus chose those 12 guys is because he knew that they were morons. And before you get offended or self-righteous, he knew that he could ask them questions that you and I needed to know the answers to, and they would just open their mouths and say the first stupid thing that they thought of, and then Jesus could explain the right answer, and we would know without ever opening our mouths. He was already looking out for you. So Jesus said, who gave the greater offering? And one of the disciples goes, clearly the rich guys gave the greater offering. And Jesus said, no, the rich men gave from their abundance, while the little old lady gave from her poverty. And then he explained to us that what that means is, when you give an offering, you're supposed to put yourself in a place where you become dependent upon God. The word abundance means more than you need, so if you're giving out of your abundance, you haven't given anything at all. But the little old lady gave from her poverty. She gave everything she had. Therefore, she became completely dependent upon God. Thus, she gave the greater offering. And just real quick here, parenthetically, number one, 2 things. Number one, that is in no way a prosperity verse. And number 2, I say this on behalf of any church treasurers listening tonight. If you are giving out of your abundance, don't quit. It's not doing you any good, but the rest of us are benefiting. So, the pastor told us that the rich men gave from their perfidy. Yeah, we didn't know what it meant either. But it seemed like a weird place to keep your money. And then he motioned toward the scale, and he said that if we continue to give in this perfidious way, that the demons of hell would descend upon us, snatch our souls, and drag them down to the sulfuric pits. And we were like, yeah, right? Because we were Methodists. Methodists don't have demons of hell. We have covered dish dinners. And so again, Skeeter and I were moved, but again, not in the direction that the pastor had intended. It's just that night we went home and we collected every penny in both of our houses. And we put them in, we had an old wool hunting sock. I bet we had about 18 inches of pennies, probably 10 inches in diameter. And I'm talking pre-1983 pennies. I'm talking 174 pennies to the pound. And when we got to church the next day, Skeeter kept those pennies behind his back, because you're probably familiar with the idea that even the observation of an experiment can change the outcome of the experiment. The same is certainly for a prank at church. And when it came time to give the offering, Skeeter got last in line, and he kept those pennies between his back and the wall, and he just kind of slid all the way down the wall. And when it was his turn, when he got to the scale, he didn't gently introduce the pennies into the blue can. He held that tube of pennies about 10 inches above the can, and he just dropped it. And when those pennies hit that side of the scale dropped dramatically, causing the other side of the scale to rise precipitously. And when the blue can hit the floor, the scale stopped, but the pink can didn't. It was still going. And when it got to the end of the binder's twine, binding it to the 2x4, the binder's twine just ripped. And every eye in that sanctuary watched that pink can fly through the sky. We watched it, and it hit the ceiling. And when it hit the ceiling, it didn't stop. It just punched a hole right through the ceiling. And we all stood there, staring at that hole. And then the demons of hell started to pour forth thousands and thousands of bats just roiling out of the ceiling, and everyone ran for their lives. Everybody was running from the sanctuary, clutching their souls tightly to their chests lest they be ripped away, everyone but Skeeter and myself, because we knew this was our moment, and we went straight for the baptismal. And we didn't stop to look. We just put our hands on the side and we vaulted over. And when we had gone just far enough that we could no longer halt our forward progress, when we were now nothing but slaves to Newton's first law, body in motion tends to stay in motion, which is very similar to Skeeter's first law, which is a body being chased by the law tends to stay in motion. But when we could do nothing but fly a little further forward and fall, we looked down and we saw that someone, some unknown person, had dyed the water red. And a few minutes later, when we joined the rest of the kids on the front lawn of the church, we were limping and dripping and dyed pink. We heard a voice behind us that said, "Boys, boys, boys. When a man does things purely for his own enjoyment and not for the benefit of others or the glory of God, he will be tainted and stained that others may know."